right. So we're in August?
We are in August.
Yes.
Augustus Caesar.
Yes.
Yes. Black August.
What does that mean?
Black August. That's you know what? It's so funny, y'all. We were talking about this again before we came on. Black August is a fascinating concept. It came into existence at the end of the 1970s, but it speaks to Black resistance, Black self-determination, and there's a tension there. So if we take, well, the simple definition is that Black August is a time here in the United States and around the world where we pause and lift up the names and commemorate those Black folk who have resisted state oppression in this country, particularly in the United States. Those who have suffered for directly resisting state oppression, meaning our political prisoners, many of whom still live or are still captive. And so it is not a celebration. And for those who want to, perhaps see more of a conversation, there are a lot of different places you can go in terms of websites. If you look to the Jericho movement, for example, which talks about Black political prisoners, we'll talk more about them in a second. But I've been, listening to some important conversations. All my friends over at Black Power Media, for example, who are having conversations about Black August, who have done a lot of work around Black August. Black August is also anchored in the idea of not only reflecting and commemorating, but being disciplined, organizing, even up to and including physical discipline, exercise, diet, trying to get our minds, our souls, our bodies together so that we can organize to liberate ourselves. But the thing about Black August is it's not Black History Month. And I'm not saying that in critique of Black History Month. We talked a lot about Carter Woodson in this conversation, but let's think about it in terms of maybe the best, what we'll do? We can do it in terms of our conceptual categories. The social structure that Black August came out of is the modern world system, in particular capitalism, American imperialism, American empire. And so that's what created the context for it. And we'll get much more specific in a second. I'm just gonna go through these very quickly. The governance structure, who are Africans to each other, really, Black August organized around Black folk in captivity, prisoners, political prisoners in captivity, organizing with each other within prison walls. And then from there, expanding outward into networks of other Black people organizing with a single determination to destroy this system of hierarchy and oppression that keeps Black people oppressed and ultimately then oppresses everybody. It's anti-capitalism is at the heart of it. We'll talk more about that. The ways of knowing in terms of how do people make sense of the world. Black August is no respecter of the imaginary lines we were talking about, because oppressed people all over, whether it's the Dalits in India, as I say, with Black folk here in the United States, Native Americans, First Nations, because there are Native American political prisoners. Leonard Peltier, we talked about the American Indian movement last summer. So the ways of knowing, however, and I'll make a distinction here between Black August and Black History Month. Black August isn't we know that, of course, we talked about this extensively, and y'all go and check Knarrative, because we had long conversations about Woodson, and we even did the Miseducation of the Negro. Y'all can go and get that has now been formatted for this reason. Woodson, of course, starts in February because he marks the second week in February, the birth weeks of Freddie Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, to talk about what some people would say, Black history is American history. Woodson was a lot larger than that, but politically and conceptually, he put it there to make that point in some ways and to kind of use that as a point of departure for thinking about the Black past. Black August, no. Black August thing is, this is a criminal enterprise. It must be destroyed. And then we got to make something different. And at the center of that conversation is a brother who I'm going to talk about in a second, because there's been a number of pieces written about him, but there are two pieces that he wrote that we will focus on. That's George Jackson. George Jackson, who is really seen as the central figure. The Jackson family, in fact, mother, his brother Jonathan, And that's why it's August for Black August. We'll get to that in a second. But if we look at science and technology, Black August comes into existence in many ways because of the use of technology of writing, the book, the letter, correspondence. George Jackson's letters were published in the first of his two books, a book called Soul Dad Brother, The Prison Letters of George Jackson. This is a paperback copy of it. It has since been reprinted, as has Blood in My Eye, which is the second book. But the technology is there, and Black August comes in the wake of the center of what some people might call the Black Power movement. One of the reasons why the Black Panther Party was so powerful is because of the imagery of that panther, that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the organizers involved in that went into Lowndes County, Alabama, and traced out the panther. But that panther, if you all, those of you who are alumni of or familiar with the mascot of Clark Atlanta, now Clark Atlanta University, then Clark College and Atlanta University, Clark College, it's that same panther. That's the image that ends up in Lowndes County Freedom Organization when they put together that organization so that Black people could participate in electoral politics, not being with the Democrats or the Republicans, and really the Democrats in the South during that period, and said, we need our own symbol. And the symbol in Lowndes County, Alabama for the Democratic Party was the rooster. So they said, well, we're going to get something to eat a rooster up. So they take the panther and they take and trace that out. And that panther then, through direct connection with folks who are working with SNCC that summer, ends up on the West Coast. And that's that same panther you see on the berets, on the t-shirts, on the bags for the free food program, with the young people, the breakfast program, the clinics. It's that panther. So you see the institutional connection. But in terms of technology, imagery, in the Black Panther newspaper, in the photographs, this whole book's called Photographing the Panthers. We see that's when it enters the public imagination. And George Jackson cuts a very striking figure. In fact, you can just see him here in his prison gear with his chained at the waist, as they would do, coming into court for arraignment. And that's the same picture. This is the first edition of the book, Blood in My Eye, George Jackson, who wrote Soul Dad Brother. Here's his picture here. Photogenic brother. They put this brother in jail, 19 years old. They gave him from 1 year to life. What did they convict him of? They said he tried to steal $70 from a gas station in LA. He got from 1 year to life. You know, so wait, what do you, when we talk about Jackson, the last letters in Soul Dad Brother are letters between George Jackson and Angela Davis. So, and then that's a whole nother, George Jackson is a major figure. And we'll get to this point in terms of Black August, but the technology, to my point, science technology, it is really moving image technology, recordings. We have recordings of George Jackson, the writing, the books. That's the delivery system that puts them in the imagination, scares the hell out of the United States. A lot of rhetoric we hear now comes out of a shift in the world, really, in terms of science technology. And Black people take advantage of that. These imageries that inspire the fear. Movement and memory. Black August, as I say, is a commemoration. It's not a celebration. It's a commemoration. And it's important for us to think about that because, and here's where we're getting to the definition. In fact, let me tie it to something we've already talked about. I didn't pull this. There's been a few graphic novels and others that have talked about this. Remember we talked about this one, the Black Panther Party, the graphic novel. And one of the things that this graphic novel on the Black Panther Party does is it includes some drawings of political prisoners. Here's Angela Yvonne Davis and here's George Jackson together, right? We see them. They got a lot of political prisoners in here. And it's important because George Jackson was imprisoned in Soul Dad Prison in California. And then he and two other brothers were accused of, in fact, I'll just read it out of Soul Dad Brothers so you can see. Well, here, I'll just read it from the graphic novel. That way he was born September 23rd, 1941 in Chicago. And he talks about that in here, growing up, his mother, his father, they met there, his camping. George Jackson was sentenced to 1 year to life for a gas station robbery. He was 19 at the time. While locked up in Soledad State Prison, Jackson became politicized and founded the Black Guerrilla Army, an organization determined to educate Black prisoners and turn them into revolutionaries. Let me pause there for a second and go to Soledad Brother, where he tells this story. He talks about, let me see here. Yes, let's just let him tell the story. George Jackson says, when I was accused of robbing a gas station of $70, I accepted a deal. This may be familiar to folks. You know how this works. I agreed to confess and spare the county court costs in return for a light county jail sentence. I confessed, but when time came to sentencing, they tossed me into the penitentiary with 1 to life. Or the old heads used to say where I'm from, they gave him from now on. You know what I'm saying? He said, what's your bid, man? Man, they gave that brother from now on. In other words, this is the treachery. And of course, those of you who are public defenders or former prosecutors or prosecutors right now, but who work in the system, bailiffs or been around the courts, and you know, we've both seen those things up front, Professor Hunter. You know, the lawyer will sell you out. I didn't do it. Yeah, well, you didn't do it, but I'm telling you right now, just take the deal because you can get in and like, give you 6 months, whatever. The lawyer sold him out. They gave him from 1 to life. All right, he goes on. He said, that was 1960. I was 18 years old. I've been here ever since. So that brother was published in October 1970. So he's in his 10th year, going to his 11th year. Most of that time in solitary confinement, including a place where they call the O Block, 23 and a half hours a day solitary confinement. They didn't let you change your clothes. They didn't let you have a toilet. So in other words, you had to live in your excrement. They wouldn't let you bathe. George Jackson is literally, well, let's see what he says. He said,
Dr. Carr.
Yes, ma'am.
What was his crime?
They say he robbed a gas station of $70.
And for that, he got one year.
Yes, ma'am.
To his entire life.
That's exactly right.
In these United States.
Oh, no question.
Okay.
And there are those who are in this conversation right now, watching us and having this conversation, who not only can say, I can identify, who will give us the names of their friends and family, or perhaps even them, who have faced an impossible situation that turned absurd. It ain't just Franz Kafka writing about the trial. It ain't just Dostoevsky talking, no, we talking about Black Americans who could tell you right now, I went into court, they told me one thing, next thing you know, I was locked up for, and in this case, it's such an extreme case, except what Jackson writes about is not only is it not extreme, this happens all the time, the system is set up to do that. So
justification to putting him in solitary confinement for 23 years with no
well,
bathroom and no shower and no ability to change it. I mean, I don't even understand that.
Well, once he got, well, this is where it turned. And here's where we go. This is where, because he didn't go in the way that he ended up in as a result of what happened 10 years in. Imagine now, you done 10 years for some $70. What? So you've already been in a decade. And he says, I was 18 years old. He said, I've been here ever since. I met Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Engels, and Mao when I entered prison, and they redeemed me. George Jackson, in the tradition of Malcolm X, in the tradition of many of the men and women who end up in prison, turn to the books. And all of the people who have taken funding away from prisons for libraries, understand there's a reason people do that. All the people who have taken funding away from prisons for GED programs and education programs, because what you want is to dehumanize prisoners. Your purpose is to literally crush them. And if there's a level of humanity that you still remain in, you are at the lowest level of humanity. When you make it your business to erase any possibility of humanity from these people, but they couldn't do it to George Jackson. He's reading. He says, for the first 4 years, I studied nothing but economics and military ideas. George Jackson did not go into prison as a revolutionary, but that time and that space and his experiences being Black in America came together through the discipline of study and communicating and organizing. This is where it got to be a problem, and turned him into one. He says, I met Black guerrillas. We're going to talk about that in a second. George Big Jake Lewis and James Carr, W.L. Nolan, Bill Christmas, Torrey Gibson, and many, many others. We attempted to transform the Black criminal mentality into a Black revolutionary mentality. As a result, each of us has been subjected to years of the most vicious reactionary violence by the state. Our mortality rate is almost what you would expect to find in the history of Dachau. Dachau, of course, is one of the camps where they killed, the Jews in Germany. Jews and others, by the way. Read Furpo Carr's book, No Relation, C-A-R-R, same spell. It's called Hitler's Black Victims. So it wasn't just European Jewry that were killed in those camps. You had the Roma people. The social structure referred to them derogatorily as the Gypsies. The Roma people, another stateless people like the Hmong. You had Black people in Germany as well. Again, Furpo Carr, F-R-R-P-O, Furpo Carr's book, Hitler's Black Victims. 3 of us were murdered several months ago by a pig shooting from 30 feet above their heads with a military rifle, which is true. They said it was an altercation. This sniper guy starts picking off Black prisoners in the yard, kills 3 of them. Later, another white guard was killed. And that's where this book comes from. And that's where the harsh lockdown happened. As we talk about here, George Jackson says, while locked up in Soledad State Prison, Jackson became politicized and founded the Black Guerrilla Family. Those names, I remember, they called the Black Guerrilla Family, an organization determined to educate Black prisoners and turn them into revolutionaries. Jackson began communicating with Huey Newton. Remember, the Black Panther Party had been founded in 1966. This is the problem. So now here we are in 2021, every documentary they make, we talking about, in fact, volume 3, the only one that will be posthumous, well, I imagine they'll keep going, but the one that he worked on, the last one he worked on directly that I know of, John Lewis, the graphic novel March, is coming out. And I was looking at a preview and they showed the Black Panther Party in Alabama that was involved in voter registration, now that symbol. And the language, I don't know whether John Lewis wrote this or not, but the language was like, the people of Alabama, we used a panther, it organized them. It was the mascot of the Lowndes County. I said, mascot? Mascot, it's the symbol. Who's writing this copy? I'm saying, always wanting to sanitize. And John Lewis, freedom fighter, we had a whole conversation about him, C.T. Vivian, but pay very careful attention to how the social structure narrates resistance and how they want to steer you into certain forms of resistance. Because for somebody in here, I suspect this may be the first time you heard the name George Jackson. There's a reason for that. George Jackson was an organizer too. They were organizing in the prisons and changing people's political conscience. Remember, Malcolm didn't get thrown into prison in Massachusetts, in state prison, and all of a sudden say, man, I'm gonna turn my life. No. The other brothers in prison were like, hey man, what are you doing? Come on, bro. In other words, organizing in the prison. This is seen as a direct political threat. And then when we talk about these political prisoners, many of them have Muslim names, but the idea is Islam is a threat. I mean, we could draw the line straight through. The people who are out there like, I'm against CRT and I ain't wearing no mask. CRT, masks, Sharia law, communism, all of those are labels for whiteness, protecting itself against anything that they don't define as them. Donald Trump says our country, or the governor of Tennessee, Bill Lee, says CRT is anti-American. He's absolutely right if you accept his definition of American as white. And what Jackson and them are saying is this system is set up to stop. No, if you throw us in here from now on and we're not organizing, you're still going to try to degrade us and take our humanity, but this is not a problem. The minute we start talking to each other and reading books and trying to organize, now you say we are enemies of your system, and now you're going to do anything, which includes in 1970, after being charged with the death of a prison guard, Jackson and his fellow Soledad brothers faced the death penalty. What does that mean? They said George Jackson is the only one who could have organized the people, the prisoners that ended up killing that white guard. No evidence. No, they said, but this is our chance to keep him in here and to subject him to even more degrading conditions. So while he's on trial, he's preparing that they're going to put him on trial for the murder of this guard with these other two brothers. That's what they call them, the Soul Dad brothers. They're going to put him on trial. While he's awaiting trial, he has been in correspondence, and some of the letters are here, with his brother Jonathan, younger brother. His younger brother Jonathan. Jonathan is being politicized. And that's how Angela Davis comes in. In June 1970, Angela Davis, here she is, right? Angela Davis becomes involved with the Soledad Brothers Defense Committee, which was working with jailed Panther George Jackson, because again, he's in contact with Huey P. Newton. Okay, you a Panther. He organized the first Black Panther chapter in prison, not jail, prison. And fellow inmates John Cluchette and Fleeta Drumgo, who were accused of killing a prison guard. That's the other two brothers, John Cluchette and Fleeta Drumgo. They said Cluchette, Drumgo, and Jackson killed this white guard. No evidence. In fact, when they eventually do go to trial, Cluchette and Drumgo are acquitted because you ain't got no evidence. But y'all was after George Jackson. That's who y'all were after. This brother is too. Anyway, the following month, July, at the Marion County Courthouse in California. No. This is wrong. It says in June of 1970. It wasn't the following month. Remember, this is all in the context of what in terms of movement and memory? Black August. In fact, I'll just put the date on it. August 7th, 1970. At the Marion County Courthouse in California, Jackson's brother Jonathan took Judge Harold Haley hostage in a failed attempt to get George out of prison. In fact, the famous quote he makes when they bust up in the courthouse with the guns, gentlemen, we're taking over. We'll take it from here. And they take because some of these brothers that have brought out now, part of the Soledad formation, Black Guerrilla Army, they got them in there for an arraignment. No, we taking over. We gonna bust these guys out of jail. Both Jonathan Jackson and Haley, the judge, were killed. The police came in, shot up the van. They were trying to get killed. I mean, they killed all kind of other people, including Jonathan Jackson. The gun used by Jackson had belonged to Angela Davis, who was charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and murder in the death of Haley. With a warrant issued for her arrest, Davis went underground. The FBI placed her on the 10 most wanted fugitive list. And on October 13, 1970, she was arrested in New York City after 16 months in jail. Awaiting her trial, Davis was released on bail in 1972. Her trial followed shortly thereafter, and on June 4th, 1972, she was found not guilty of the death of charges related to the death of Howard Haley. Remember, and we're not old enough to remember, but people want to know, Angela Davis came to prominence not because of her PhD, not because of her years of studying philosophy, and we talked about the autobiography of Angela Davis. She's written a lot. Y'all can start with the autobiography.
That one published by Toni Morrison.
Oh, I think, was it Random House? Yeah, I think you're right.
I am.
That's right. That's right. Come on now. You know, that's publishing world. That's exactly right. Angela Davis. Yeah. Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Yeah. She was the acquisitions. Yes, at Random House. That's exactly right. My sister Dana Williams is writing a book on her time as Angela, her acquisition work, her work as an editor at Random House. That's absolutely right. Thank you. That's right. Angela Davis comes to prominence because she's put on the FBI most wanted list. They were going to give her the death penalty. Those of you in the documentaries, you can look at her. What's the sister's name? She was at the Schomburg now. I think she may be at the Schomburg now. She took a previous documentary, added to it, did interviews, remixed it. It's called United States versus Angela Davis. Oh, I started calling names. Start with an S. It'll come to Shana. Anyway. It'll come to one of us. Anyway, the point is, Angela Davis. Shona Lynch. Yes.
And I believe they were track runners too in New York. Shola and Nana, her sister. I covered her sister when she was running track.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I believe that if that's Shola Lynch, I believe that she has a sister, and they were track and field runners in New York City.
I did not know that. I mean, it's a unique enough name for it probably to be the same person.
Look that up.
Yeah, she did a documentary too on Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm for president. She did the Shirley Chisholm 1972 documentary, and then the United States versus Angela Davis. Yeah. That's her?
Yep.
I'll be doggone. See, that's what I'm talking about. See?
Filmmaker, born in Buffalo. Her younger sister Nana, who I covered. Yeah. They originally, her father's from Trinidad and Tobago. Her mother's Canadian. Yeah.
Who are Africans to each other.
Yep. She began track and field in the 6th grade, specializing in 800 and 1500 meter. By 13, she was breaking national records in the 800, the 1500, and the 1600. That's how I know the Lynches, through track and field, which is weird. Okay.
But it just goes to show you. I mean, we are having a family conversation, and that's a Pan-African way. Trinidad, and then they claim in Canada, but y'all know them Negroes in Canada, unless they go back to the Revolutionary War, most of them from the Caribbean. So
Mama's a white Canadian.
Wow. Okay. Well, we say it's a small world, but when people say it's a small world, what they really saying is, in terms of Black folk, the governance structure. We kind of know you can't really go too far in Black communities without connecting to somebody who knows somebody who know. Yes. Okay, well, that was her sister. Then her sister Shola did the Angela Davis documentary, and in fact, in the documentary, you see some actors reenacting.
Those were Shola's numbers that I was giving you. She was a track and field runner as well. Her sister was also.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, that was Shola's.
They were both. Wow.
That was Shola's pedigree in track and field. So
I don't recall. Wow. See, that's interesting. So then that determination to be excellent crossed fields, which is what you often see. You good at one thing and dedicated in one thing, you can often transfer those skills. And she became an award-winning filmmaker. And in fact, now I want to say she's on the staff of the Schomburg, if she's still there, over their film division, moving image division, I think is what they call it, New York Public Library. Wow. So yeah, and you see George Jackson and Angela Davis interacting in the film. You don't see, there's no footage of that, but they reenacted. But the point is that they've developed a very close relationship. The last letters in So their brother are to Angela Davis, who George Jackson, they fell in love. I mean, there's kind of a romantic revolutionary dimension to it. And of course, Angela Davis, on trial for her life, was acquitted. So George Jackson, in order to raise money for his defense and defense of the Soledad brothers, his lawyer at the time encourages him to publish his prison letters. And that's where this comes from. His brother is killed August the 7th, 1970. Now, while awaiting trial, George Jackson, during that year, they're raising money. This becomes a bestseller. Because remember, we're talking about between 1970 and 1971. So, of course, the Panthers are known all over the world. 69, Mark Clark and Fred Hampton are executed. You know, they just did the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. You see, I mean, the United States has declared war on the Black Panther. And we talked about that. We've had a long conversation about the COINTELPRO papers and all this. And not just Black people, but certainly Black people in the bullseye. So not just the Weather Underground, there are others, American Indian movement, but the state is moving against Black people. So the following year, has been a year, the second book, Blood in My Eye, he writes this one. And during the time you're in a 23.5-hour lockdown in your own feces and excrement, trying to, you know, they don't let you bathe. I mean, but he is getting stronger. This is the thing about George Jackson. That's why Black August is very different than Black History Month. The dedication to the Black communist youth, to their fathers. We will now criticize the unjust with the weapon. George Jackson, quoting Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. The dragon, he said, the symbol of the dragon are those who are in the cage. Beware when the dragon is let out. In fact, one of the last things he writes, and he writes to Eldridge Cleaver, he gets with a terrible response, kind of blow-off response from Cleaver. And in fact, I'll just read you, because Cleaver, of course, with the Black Panther Party, is a whole nother thing. He says, let me see if I can find it quickly. He said, he returned a very scurrilous and profane set of invectives, in short, a piece of vendetta. Tell Eldridge Cleaver, that 7,000 miles, walls of prison, steel and barbed wire do not make him safe from my special brand of discipline. Tell him that the dragon is coming. George Jackson's thing was, we're not going to get out of this condition by talking, by posing. And Soledad Brother, in fact, he has some very choice words for what he considers right-wing thinkers like and figures like Maulana Karenga and Amiri Baraka. This is part of the challenge in even how some call revolutionary nationalists, some people will call revolutionary nationalists. Think about the label some people would give so-called cultural nationalists. A lot of this is social structure inspired. They would say, see, y'all talking about changing y'all names and going back to Africa and all this kind of thing. That's not what's going to get us free. We're going to have to pick up some guns and free ourselves. We're going to have to destroy this system. And we're in prison, many of us, which means we've already been put in the worst condition. You can't talk your way out of prison. You can't reform your way out of prison. You can't. In fact, a lot of the energy of the young people who are now and others who are in the streets talking about defund the police, a lot of that energy is Black August energy, is George Jackson energy. You listen to them, you talk with them. As a sister, among many others, and it just comes to mind immediately because I was just looking at a conversation she was having a couple of days ago, Yane Indigo. She was an undergraduate at Temple when I was in graduate school there. And they're organizing in Philadelphia, and they're reading Blood in My Eye, 10 pages a day during August, because this is the last book George Jackson did. And he dedicates it there, but the opening quote is from his mother. My dear only, here's the page, right? Y'all can't see it, I'm just gonna read. My dear only surviving son. She's writing to her other book because Jonathan been killed, the teenager, on August the 7th, 1970. My dear only surviving son, I went to Mount Vernon August 7th, 1971 to visit the grave site of my heart, your keepers murdered in cold disregard for life. In other words, I went to go see your brother's grave. His grave was supposed to be behind your grandfather's and grandmother's, but I couldn't find it. There was no marker, just mowed grass. The story of our past. I sent the keeper a blank check for a headstone and 2 extra sites. Blood in my eye. That's his mom. That's his mother. George Jackson did not live to see Blood in My Eye published. Why? Because on August 21st, 1971, 2 days before the opening of his trial, he had been moved from Soledad to San Quentin. He was killed inside San Quentin. Prison authorities state that he was shot by a tower guard during an escape attempt as he ran from the prison's maximum security section with a gun in his hand and raced for the 20-foot wall. George's words after his brother Jonathan's death became his own best epitaph. When they killed Jonathan, George Jackson wrote, he was free for a while. I guess that's more than most of us can expect. So even though they murdered his brother, shooting into the van, killed all them guys out there. Remember Stanley Nelson's documentary on the Black Panthers? And he's interviewing the Panthers when they had that shootout out there in Oakland, and the damn Oakland police went out there and shot up the Panthers, and then headquarters, and the sister went out waving the white flag, you know, stripped down so they couldn't say she had any weapons. One of the brothers was like, you know, I was a veteran, you know, I had been, you know, in service with. We were inside shooting at the police, and they were shooting at us. Now the police started it, you know. Shout out to the police, doing what you do. We're not doing well. Then fight the rest of them. Then this is revolutionary consciousness. If you're a cop that don't do that, but you get in a car with one that does, and they still doing it, that's your fault too. Anyway, they shooting in the Panthers, so the Panthers shoot back. They've been in a gun battle. The brother Stanley Nelson interview says, you know what? We could have been killed at any second. But in them moments when we was trading gunfire with the police, I was free. Now, that brother's going to die old age. Now, he made it out. No, but he's saying in that moment, so when George Jackson writes about his brother, well, you know, he was free, which is more than I could say for the rest of us. Because what he writes about in both these books is, you may not be in prison, but if you Black in America, he talks about being neo-slaves. In fact, let me just read a little bit what he says. He's writing, he says, slavery, this is April 17th, 1970. Slavery is an economic condition. The classical chattel in today's neo-slavery must be defined in terms of economics. This is some people call it historical materialism, but Marxism, whatever you want to call it. He was saying, I'm a socialist. In other words, you have to destroy hierarchy. He said, get rid of hierarchy, and then we need to have an egalitarian society. If you think about what Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, if you think about what Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar and all those allies who came out and slept on the steps of Congress since we've been together and who forced the hand. And if you think of other sisters, like Maxine Waters, also from Missouri, St. Louis. A lot of people she's from St. Louis. She's out on the West Coast, but like Cori Bush, another, she's on the inside forcing the committee, getting the legislation through, and it gets bottlenecked. It gets bottlenecked because Nancy Pelosi doesn't have the votes to get this moratorium extended. Now, so what does she do? I'm sorry, I think Nancy Pelosi, and then who's the number 2 person in the House of Representatives? I can't think. Who's the whip? The whip, I think, is number 3 position. The whip is
Clyburn the whip?
Oh, yeah. While Jim Clyburn was in Cleveland, or wherever he was, inserting himself. Did y'all know that in Cincinnati and in Columbus, and I'm sure in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, I think the number is 50%. Half the landlords in Cincinnati who are qualified to receive Section 8 vouchers won't take them. One of the reasons they won't take Section 8 vouchers is because they don't want those people living in their buildings. And they try to keep poor people, Black and brown people, contained in, because the overwhelming majority of people who have Section 8 vouchers are Black and brown people. I think close as 3/4, mostly Black and also brown. These people are kept in certain places. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the housing crisis and being unhoused, but I do want to make this point that's very important in that. Did you find, I forget who numbered?
Steny Hoyer.
Oh, Steny Hoyer, of course, Maryland. I don't know why I was thinking Steny Hoyer on the Senate side. Yeah, Representative Hoyer. Yeah, so Pelosi, Hoyer, Clyburn, Baba Jim, you can't whip the votes to get the moratorium passed. Pelosi knows that. So what does she do? Blame Biden. You see, you didn't give us any advance notice. Now, if you listen to Ilhan Omar, particularly and others, but I heard Ilhan Omar in an interview a couple of days ago, she said, we've been on them since May to get this because it's going to run out. When these landlords, people saying, well, most of the landlords are small landlords. Yeah, that's all you people like you billionaires want all these tax breaks and say, well, most of the people are small people. No, don't hide the fact that the real estate lobby is sitting on real estate and what's going on now. You know this better than I do. You probably had the conversation. Have y'all talked about this question of this investor class that has turned to rental property to make all the money? That's what they're doing. They, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So during this period, you're seeing real estate prices go up. They are going to move people from ownership to renting. And so one of the reasons they ain't in no hurry to spend this $47 billion that's been set aside in already passed legislation is they want these people out. Right here in the state of Maryland, they can't evict you, but they can put you out if you've overstayed your lease. So what they do, they just don't renew the lease. Then they're going to be, yeah, but I didn't pay. No, the money's coming. That ain't it. You overstayed your lease. We gave you 60 days notice, 30 days notice. Now we're putting you out. Why? Because they want that property. Remember, a lot of our people living in the poorer parts of these cities are living in places that are being quickly gentrified. So some of this has nothing to do with we can't get the money from the federal government. It's state and local government supposed to set up the apparatus, and the state and local government is being lobbied hard by the real estate people. And so even the mom and pop people who are using it for retirement income or day-to-day income, they getting screwed too. So this is all this is going on. These sisters are on the steps. They trying to push it through. You got a sister in Congress, Maxine Waters, trying to get the stuff through. Pelosi and Clyburn and Hoyer can't get the votes. So they blame Biden. Biden says, well, the courts ruled. Now, the courts didn't rule that it was unconstitutional. It was a 5-4 decision. And what Brett Kavanaugh, Justice Beer Kavanaugh did, y'all go read his concurrence. He said, I don't know that the federal government, I don't think the federal government has the authority to extend it. It didn't say that they didn't. He said he didn't think it did. And he was the fifth vote, which meant it's still being litigated by the courts. In other words, Biden could have extended it any time. They were passing the buck between. Now, set aside who, any of us might think between Nina Turner and Shontel Brown be one, but don't you think the conscience of the Congress should have been somewhere on them steps with those sisters instead of out there in Cleveland trying to ensure that all that dark money that Jane Mayer writes about, one way or the other, did Nina Turner run a bad campaign? Okay, is that really the point? Somebody get ready to get put in the street. Y'all got better. In fact, they get ready to get put in the street in this city. In fact, in Cleveland. In fact, in Columbus. In fact, in Cincinnati. And for those of you who don't know, Ayanna Presley's parents met in Cincinnati where they were both housing activists. That's one of the reasons why Ayanna Presley out there on the steps with Cori Bush. These young sisters in there, I don't like the squad. Okay, you tell me. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get a hot iron and make 3 letters out of iron, CRT. And I'm gonna get it real hot on a stove, and I'm gonna hit right here, and I'm gonna say, if you can't tell me one policy you disagree with when you say you don't like the squad, I'm gonna burn this CRT in your face because you just as bad as them people. I'm against CRT. What is CRT? I'm against CRT. Okay, I'm against the squad. Okay, what you against? I'm against this. Okay, see, y'all watch too much TV. Anyway, so back to the point. What you see here is the reason people don't have a place to stay, George Jackson would say, is economics. It's a hierarchy. This system depends on keeping people oppressed. We're in jail. We're in prison. We're incarcerated. We see what the issue is. We face it literally, but you face it. In fact, I'll end with this right here when he quotes this on page 191. For those of you who have a copy of Blood in My Eye, of Soul Dad Brother, he says, the man who owns the factory or shop or business runs your life. I read that sentence and I thought about you, Professor Hunter. How many times have I heard you say variations of this? You are dependent on this owner. That's what we build in narrative. Anyway, he organizes your work, the work upon which your whole life source and style depends. He indirectly determines your whole day in organizing you for work. If you don't make any more in wages than you need to live, you are a neo-slave. You qualify if you cannot afford to leave California for New York. If you cannot visit Zanzibar, Havana, Peking, or even Paris, when you get the urge, you are a slave. If you're held in one spot on this earth because of your economic status, it is just the same as being held in one spot because you are the owner's property. Here in the Black colony, the pigs still beat us and maim us. They murder us and call it justified homicide. Wait, this is not 2021. This is 1970. All right. He says, a brother who had a smoking pipe in his belt was shot in the back of the head. Neo-slavery is an economic condition, a small knot of men exercising the property rights of the established social order, organizing and controlling the style of the slave, the life, as if he were in fact property. So he goes on and he says succinctly, an economic condition which manifests itself in the total loss or absence of self-determination. Only after this is understood and accepted can we go on to the dialectic that will keep us in a remedy. Those of you familiar with the word dialectic, you see where he's going with this, right? It's a Marxist analysis, it's a socialist analysis. But the important thing to understand about it is what Jackson is laying the foundation for is, in order to change it, we got to have a revolution. Oh, wait, short. Let me see. There it is. Who published that, Professor Hunter?
You know who published
BCP. Oh, Black Classic Press. Hey, you know what? There's a book recently that just came out where Paul Coates is having a conversation with his longtime comrade, Eddie Conway. It's called The Brother You Choose. Because Paul Coates was captain of the Panthers in Baltimore. And Eddie Conway was over them, and they put Eddie Conway in jail for decades. And I'm telling you how close these brothers are. Paul and his comrades fought, struggled, caped. My friend and brother Jerry Ball at Morgan State University, I was part of the next generation who continued that struggle. And eventually they got Eddie Conway out. And Eddie Conway and Paul Coates had that conversation in a book called The Brother You Choose. It came out last. You're not the brother that came out of my mother's womb, but we chose. And Paul is very deep in that political prisoner work. So when you see Black Classic Press, there are very conscious and deliberate decisions to publish certain books. And I'm so glad, yes, that you had that one right there on the shelf. That, for those of you who are going to get that book, that the book you just showed us, Professor Hunter, that's the one you'll get when you go on to get it. This is the first edition after when it came out. So we see them there. There they go. The same picture, right? I love it. I love it. Yes, yes. And see, that's what I'm talking about. So yeah, no. But that's it. I mean, and the thing about it is when you crack it open, it just really just it hits you. In fact, this is from Blood in My Eye. He says, whatever takes place in social life is actively or passively, voluntarily or involuntarily determined by the structure of masses of people. Every form of social leadership is merely the social expression of one or the other side of this structure of masses of people. Now he's quoting from something, but then he says there, next, this is page 169, revolutionary change always involves the complete alteration of the structure of property relations and the institutional substructures that support them. It leads from hierarchy to mass society. So they're in prison, reading, discussing, trying to figure out, and they said it's not going to be peaceful. So to summarize, his brother is killed August 7th, 1970. 2 days before trial, George Jackson is killed. They claim he's trying to escape. They claim he has a gun, but they really just wanted to kill him. That happens on August 21st, 1971. And there you have 2 of the 3 deaths that lead to the commemoration of what we call Black August. The 3rd death happens near the end of the decade. This happens in California again. Another brother who was killed in 1978. He was part of the Black guerrilla family, organizer, working to organize folk, and he died as a result of not receiving medical treatment. This is 1978 in August. And the following year, it was 1978. The following year, 1979, Black August is begun. And Black August then, what people started doing, they started looking at what else happened in else happened in August that we can use to think about resistance. The Haitian Revolution. We did a long thing. 1791, August the 4th is when they formally set off the military actions that began the Haitian Revolution formally, right? August the 21st, 1831. And we're going to talk about this. I think today is the 7th, 7/14. We go live next week, 21. So not next week, maybe the week after. Let's have a conversation on what happened on August the 21st, 1831. That's Nat Turner. The Nat Turner Rebellion. Oh, y'all get ready. We're going to have Nat Turner. We're going to talk about Nat Turner. August the 11th, 1965, the Watts Rebellion. People say sometimes they use that as one of the markers of the beginning of the Black Power decade. And then, of course, what we see is that in years since George Jackson, August the 14th, 2014, that's when August the 9th was when Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri. And, we talk about Trayvon Martin, we talk about Sandra Bland, but that Mike Brown killing with that boy laying in the street like that really, in many ways, people went out to Ferguson, and that battle from ground zero, different than Florida, different than Texas, that really, in many ways, launched this next iteration of struggle that Jonathan Jackson and George Jackson would say comes to us. So if you want to read more about George Jackson, we tell you where to go. We show you there. But if you go to now the other dimension, only other dimension I mentioned on Black August now, because Black August is about reading, organizing, thinking, disciplining oneself. A lot of times people fast during Black August because it's about self-determination. It's about revolution. It's about liberation. And it's not, and I had this conversation because I find myself, Prof, I find myself sometimes never conflicted, but aware and deeply, maybe contemplative is the word, of the fact that some things can't be reconciled. We can't reconcile them. For somebody in this room right now who's able to sit with a little peace in her or his heart and participate in this, who has your young people, you sending us pictures on social media, children watching and listening, who is able to do that and be able to sleep a little bit tonight because you're not worried about an eviction notice. That's real. That's very different than those of us who might either be in a place that we quote unquote own, as if that's such a thing, or a place where you don't worry about your rent money. But somebody's in our family right now who was worried until Cori Bush and them was like, hell no, and forced Joe Biden. Nancy Pelosi, whatever. Steny Hoyer, whatever. Jim Clyburn, whatever. You can't keep pulling you don't keep getting the elder pass, man, by talking about people check their tone. Because you would have said that to Cori Bush. Well, guess what? Somebody in your district in South Carolina is not worried about being evicted. And I'm going to take that over worried about somebody's tone. And as far as George Jackson is concerned, consider that a compromise, because Black August is about ain't none of y'all. In fact, Jackson writes about, he said, all you Negroes is rented Negroes. There's no such thing as a politician that will save this system because the system can't be reformed. It's set up to do what it's doing. And so I find myself contemplative because there's a lot of merit in that. But that just means there's going to be pain. But nobody is facing the pain more than somebody who's in lockdown. And so whether it be Khalif Browder, whether it be Sandra Bland, they're going to put suicide on her. Look, that's the end. And that's the end. And so you have to understand where this is coming from. And so anyway, I set out to say that there are a number of political prisoners who are still. Mumia Abu-Jamal, been in jail since 1981, now got life without parole. Say again.
He's not doing well either, right? He's sick.
Yeah, he is sick and been sick. Yeah, that's the other thing. When they giving you life, they giving you a death sentence. That's the death penalty over time. You know what I'm saying? Well,
if you think about the conditions that you're talking about, the conditions in which you are describing that George Jackson, who didn't make it to 30, right? Didn't make it out of his 20s, right. And then went to jail for something that somebody would have copped a plea for and gotten probation if they were a different complexion.
Which is what they told him that was going to happen. Yo, well, you won't do county jail. And then when he got in there and started reading and organizing, oh no, you ain't never getting out. Either we're going to kill you in here or we'll give you however long you're going to live. And then, as you say, in the case of Mumia, who joined the Panthers at age 16. In fact, one summer, my Philadelphia Freedom Schools, I'm repping the 2021 shirt. I was in Philly last weekend, my people. They did the red, black, and green version with Yehudi. And to make sure that they understood, young people are vulnerable. What? Wear your mask. See, they got the young people in there. I see y'all. I love those. Shout out to my man, Mark Martinez. My brother, who is the dean over there at Sankofa Freedom Academy, and Mama Aisha Imani and my sister Erica Asakoye, they was all over it. I was like, man, I love y'all so much. And in fact, I don't have to move back to Philadelphia. I don't know. I'll come back closer to Jersey because I love them. Because, Sankofa Freedom Academy is a K-12 public charter school. We call it the country's first K-12 freedom school. And they have been working all summer. They work year round. And they got all kind of other stuff going on. My sister, Dr. Kelly Sparrow Micken, she had all the t-shirts from 22 years of freedom school. I'm like, you got all the shit. This is the history right here. But anyway, the point is that those political prisoners, of course, we know one summer, our freedom school students, we had them read one of Mumia's many books, his memoir, We Want Freedom. And what you see is he's on the front cover of the book, answering the phone at the Panther headquarters. He's a teenager. At the time, Mumia Abu-Jamal, whose European name was Wesley Cook, was a high school student at Benjamin Franklin High School. And they wanted to change the name of Ben Franklin High School to Malcolm X High School. They even made up diplomas and did everything else. North Philly, all day long. And so, but the Panthers there, Frank Rizzo stripped the Panthers naked in the middle of the street in North Philly. All this, there's a war against the Panthers. And a lot of those Panthers are still in prison. Cats like Paul Coates' brother, Eddie Conway, locked up out of Baltimore. Paul himself is from West Philly. I mean, born and raised, I seen him raised in Baltimore. Paul's from West Philly. And so Delbert Africa, the so-called Move 9.
Ooh, yeah, I was going to just bring them up. Wilson Good and what happened to them. As you're talking, I'm thinking, revolution is so much more dangerous, right?
Yes.
You know, all of this talk but you're not telling people not to vote. You're not telling people that, you know,
I'm not.
You know, you're saying it's probably going to crumble. You know, but do we sit home? Like, is it better to, or if we all organize? I mean, just like, what's the solution here if we're going to stay?
Well, I know you know, as we begin to wrap up, that's why I say it makes me contemplative, because I absolutely understand. I mean, when you all read Blood in My Eye and you read So Dad Brother, you'll find very little to disagree with. The question is, what do we do about it? You'll find very little to disagree with. I mean, one of the reasons that, oh man, you got me really, we're getting ready to wind this up, but I have to be very, by nature, I'm a reader. I read and I sit and think. And when we see the connections, it's our obligation. You know, we're both teachers. And in your case, it's not just your university classroom. In fact, that's just one dimension. It's not just narrative. It's not just us here on Saturdays and in class and then connecting that to narrative and continue to drive the building of that pyramid, the building of that institution. You're doing it every day on the airwaves. And it's entering people's ears in a form of technology that's never been displaced, and that this pandemic elevated again, which is radio. Radio is even different than this. People watching this, but when you have nothing but words in your mind, now you're thinking about, I mean, your mind just explodes. And so we're both well aware of the importance of language and time to think. George Jackson had nothing but time. Even the material conditions that they put him in, he made a choice and then found others who made a similar choice. And so the analysis in these books, and young people who might watch this and playing on social media and make those little memes with Damon Wayans with the kufi on his head and mispronouncing words and that, yeah, that ain't this. And I tell you what you should never do is disrespect those who, facing the belly of the beast, make a choice to start reading and thinking. So while you like, see the pontification of, or should I say, it ain't funny to me. Why? Because you not in jail and don't read. So you know what I'm saying? So who I'm really laughing, if I was gonna laugh, I ain't laughing at none of it. But if somebody said you gotta laugh at one of the groups, you gotta laugh at the cats in prison trying to educate themselves, or the people not in prison making fun of those cats. I'm laughing at people not in prison who will spend their entire lives arguing about verses and will never pick up a book. But I'm not going to laugh at either one, because I understand, as George Jackson said, that's part of a hierarchical system. If you want to know why the public education system is trash, look at the people who make the profits. Who's got the toilet paper contract? Who's got the electricity contract? Who's got the food contract? The same people. So look up Sodexo and find out the same people feeding your children in the schools are feeding the prisoners. In other words, we got to keep this criminal enterprise going. And I want to get into it, because then people say, oh, see, that's that conspiracy theory. My thing is, it absolutely is. Could you please show me where? Because I'm getting ready to laugh at you. Because between the two of us, I guarantee you on your life that I've read about it, studied about it, listened about it, and I suspect that you're just repeating some shit you saw on the internet. But that keeps you making fun of people who are doing this intellectual work. This is first-rate intellectual work. So anyway, I don't get too deep. So what do we do about it? I think this is where the bridge, I think, is built. And this is where narrative is important. But before I say it, let me spend another 30 seconds just giving a few more names of people, because we think about this. We don't want to forget these people. The Move 9, Eddie Africa, Janet Africa, Janine Africa, the Africa family. They've been in jail, many of them since the 1970s. They accuse, and most of these people they lock up, they're accused of killing police, park rangers, local city cops, state troopers. Jalil Muntaqim, Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army. They accuse him of killing 2 cops. So they give him life sentences. He is out of jail. He was released on parole. He came out of jail in October 2020. You know what the Department of Human Services in New York State did? They gave him a packet, the same packet they give people on parole. He's filling out all the forms for them to transition into quote unquote civilian life. He's in New York State now when he's doing this. One of the forms they gave him was a voter registration form. He fills it out. So what did the police and the DA do? They tried to violate his probation, say he committed a crime by trying to register to vote. But that ain't the end of it. In New York, the state restores the voting rights of felons within a window, but the window hadn't passed yet. End of the story is actually, thank God, thank the people that a grand jury refused to indict him. That happened in March 2021, a couple of months ago. However, his automatic restoration of rights was stopped by the man whose signature restores the rights of people, of ex-prisoners automatically, except in this case, he intervened and said, I reject Jalil Mutakim's automatic restoration of voting rights. Who was that guy? He's the governor of New York. I can't think of his name. What's his name? The one the sister's getting ready to cut his whole head off. I think Letitia James showed his whole head on the press conference earlier in the week. Right? Here he is. Is this your king? Oh yeah, Cuomo. Sorry, bro. So while you going to jail, you about to lose your job. Just put our sister, you know what I'm saying? From South Carolina, the Washington Post. Y'all, if y'all can find the Washington Post magazine from 2 weeks ago, they did a cover story on that sister. Her story is fascinating. The sister on the mend, you about to lose your job. This sister who wrote this article went down through what it means for Black women who are living in these kind of conditions and trying just to feed their children and come through. She takes that little video and goes through the life story of this sister, her children, her boyfriend, all that. And it was a fascinating look into the circumstances that would lead these damn fake police to put her in handcuffs in the first place, leading to the get this dance. She goes through the and like George Jackson's talking about it's set up to do that kind of thing. So anyway, Brother Cuomo, bye-bye. But Jalil Mutakim not going back to jail. But he was one who was locked up. Jalil Mutakim was locked up since 1971. Mutulu Shakur was accused of helping Assata Shakur escape. Good point. If y'all read Assata, see, this is not a political prisoner. You know why? They got her out. Still don't know how. She in Cuba. And happy 60th birthday, belated 60th birthday, Barack Obama. Shout out to you going to Cuba with your wife and asking Raul Castro to give up Assata. And shout out Raul Castro from like, yeah, so what y'all want to eat? No, Mr. Obama, you're not going to get Joanne Chesimard. You and your friend Chris Christie and all the rest of y'all got a price on Assata's head. You just going to have to do that. And as I told James Comey, when Howard invited him to be a guest faculty member, the first meeting, they said, well, we want some people to come over and talk with him. I sat there and I said, you coming on this campus, I want you to understand something. There are young people on this campus named Assata. You understand? So if you're going to be in dialogue with them, you probably need to be prepared for honest dialogue about the fact that on this campus, there are a number of people, and I'm one of them, who consider her a hero. And I suspect you don't even call her Assata Shakur. You probably still call her Joanne Chesimard, but just know that there are young women on this campus named for Assata. That's the campus you come into. He was like, I'm taking notes. Oh, this is good. I'm thinking to myself, I really don't care whether you write this down or not, because I'm only here so I don't get fined. But the point is, I'm going to let you know that all of us ain't here to stand up and salute social structure. Anyway, so, and you ain't gonna, you gonna sit there. I wonder what's gonna happen. And I don't think he ever encountered one of them Assatas. This is a freshman now at Howard. She's a STEM major, brilliant young sister. I had her in summer school this summer, named Assata. And I know, so I'm just saying, but Mutulu Shakur, the Shakur family, y'all know Shakur, of course, as in Tupac Shakur, his mother, Afeni Shakur, the Shakur family. Dr. Mutulu Shakur still in prison. He'd been in jail since 1986. Russell Maroon Schultz since 1970. Sundiata Akoli, 1973. The whole point is all these, in fact, if you want to get a good anthology, I pulled there a number of one. I like this one because it is, it's almost 900 pages and it's cheap because a lot of people doing this work want you to get the book. This is called Let Freedom Ring. Let Freedom Ring, a collection of documents from the movements to free U.S. political prisoners. Mark Meyer is the editor. But the beautiful thing about this is it is organized around what is a political prisoner, and George Jackson talks about that. International tribunals, it goes beyond the United States. A lot of people are still around. Of course, Dhoruba Ben Wahad, of course, is still here. It's got a whole chapter on settler colonialism, a long chapter on that, including the United Nations, appeals to the United Nations. It's got a whole section on Puerto Rico, colonialism in Puerto Rico, resisting repression. It's got a whole section on LGBTQIA plus or queer communities and how that the intersection, how that operates in terms of oppression and certainly in terms of political prisoners as well. A section on Mumia and the way to move him out. Has a section 7, Professor Hunter, and those of you sign up for Knarrative, y'all know. Everybody else, get this dance. Get over there to Knarrative, right? Has a whole section on John Brown. We start talking about being an ally. Y'all go check out what we did on John Brown. It's 100 pages on John Brown. The prisoner rights movement, the government's illegal and ongoing war against the Black liberation movement, including an interview with Assata Shakur from 1991. And then a struggles continue section, which talks about many of the lawyers and others. It's a very good anthology if you want to talk about political prisoners. There are a number of them, but that one there will give you pathways to many of the other ones. That and the Jericho project. So anyway, what do we do? That's where we're going to end. Thinking about our Africana Studies conceptual categories. Using Black August as our point of entry. We know the social structure we live in. George Jackson then laid that out, and he's not alone. We know the governance structure we live in is the debate on what do we do about it. Do we vote? I say yes. A lot of my comrades say no, it ain't gonna do you no good. And my response to them is usually either you are so deep up in the system that you would say we just need to physically resist. You're at such the bottom of the hierarchy, and I get that. Or you are so comfortable that you ain't got to worry about being evicted. So that this is, I stopped short of calling it cosplay revolutionary because I know that people are well-meaning and they understand, but I'm saying it seems to me, as Gil Scott-Heron once wrote and performed, in Inner City Blues, right? When he says, I'm looking at the sister and the sister has some hungry babies and has some decisions to be made. He said, would you rather go to your grave as a slave for a minimum wage? And then he said, made the devil want to holler, throw up both his hands and scream revolution. And then he goes back into Marvin Gaye because he put that spoken word between Marvin Gaye's lyrics and he comes back, crime is increasing, trigger happy policing, panic is spreading, Lord knows where I'm heading. And but in that poem, he starts that poem when he says, you ever wonder what made Mark Essex choose to fight the inner city blues? Yeah, Essex took to the rooftop, guerrilla style, and watched while all the crackers went wild. Yeah, brought in the elephant gun to block out the sun. In other words, that goes back to something that happened in the 1970s when a dude named Mark Essex got to the roof of the Howard Johnsons in New Orleans, ex-military, and started taking white folks out with a sniper. But what Gil Scott-Heron adds between the stanzas of Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues is, you ever wonder what made Mark Essex choose to fight the inner city blues? But the question is, in fact, I'm gonna show you, wait, I don't have it right. Yes, I do. If I can pull it, let me move some of these books off of here. This is my stack for this week. Actually, for the last, some of these things I've been going for a little bit over a month, but this one here, I have to pull this down. This novel
stack is deep. It's like you built a foundation.
Oh yeah.
See, it's like,
yeah. This one got pushed down. This novel is actually Sundial, which includes a sniper incident on the campus, imaginary fictional sniper incident on the campus of Howard University. It's written in 1986 by L.C. Morse. Cornel West, who went to graduate school with L.C. Morse, with Lawrence Morse at Princeton, said, this is the HBCU novel. I would have to agree with him. first of all, because I don't know too many others. I know a few others, but this novel, what he's showing is what Morse writes about is all the different ideas and students who are at a HBCU. You got the revolutionaries, you got the petty bourgeois, you got people going home for the holidays, arguing with their parents, or you went one way, you came back another way. And they meet up at the sundial. The sundial, of course, is the clock, is the little clock on the campus of Howard University, right outside Founders Library. But the interesting thing about this is that L.C. Morse, Lawrence Morse, does a great job in kind of showing the complexity of this. And just to update everybody, since 1986, Lawrence C. Morse is now the chairman of the board of the Howard University Board of Trustees. You ever wonder what made Mark Essex choose to fight the inner city blues? Yeah, Essex took to the rooftop guerrilla style and watched while all the crackers went wild. My point is that this country will push you, it ain't gonna give you no middle place. This system don't give you no middle place. Now the thing is, well, let's just keep working hard. We'll try to reform the system. We can change it from within. George Jackson is like, that can't happen. Do y'all understand? Y'all are tools now. And if you think George Jackson was the first one to say it, and to say to these people who will be considered what he would call petty bourgeois Black people, who we would say are enemies, understand it from the campus of Howard University. 30 years before Sundial came out, this brother right here, E. Franklin Frazier, wrote a book called Black Bourgeoisie. He was on the faculty of Howard University, sociologist, and he says the Black middle class has no power, and it creates these little Black enclaves to convince itself that it's relevant. But meanwhile, the system that keeps us all inlaid is laughing. So I know we're getting ready to wrap. So in terms of what we're gonna do, I'm not gonna stop short because we gotta have this conversation. How, for those folks who think that activism can be married to what in this book E. Franklin Frazier calls conspicuous consumption, understand that maybe it can. Because Black people want to enjoy life. But when you set out to say that you're about structural transformation, and then, in fact, where was I reading this, Professor Hunter? Ishmael Reed, the writer from Buffalo. Ishmael Reed, the long profile of Ishmael Reed in the most recent issue of the New Yorker. And Ishmael Reed said, he asked a question. He said, could you imagine Fannie Lou Hamer on the cover of Vogue?
Did we just talk about something similar to this before?
Oh, no, I'm going to leave that in the air. I don't know if you want to. No, I'll put it this way.
Say it.
I would not know the difference between the T for Telfar and the T for Tennessee State. But when I see life savers flavored bags and people, look, hey, do what you do. Everybody need a break. But when you send that out over the technology, people then wonder, I ain't gonna say people. I wonder, please, I wonder, are you sending a mixed message to people, some of whom don't have a place to stay, others of whom may have a place to stay, but are willing to put their thing on the line for people who don't, and then others who say, I don't know what to think, but it must be okay. So therefore, maybe I'll just sit here and wait and see what happens next. I don't know, Professor Hunter, do we have response? Do people who call themselves leaders, and George Jackson wouldn't say that. George Jackson, like Bob Moses and them. Ella Baker said the job of a revolutionary, a job of organizers to put themselves out of a job. In other words, you don't go in a community and tell people what they need. You go in the community and say, how can I help? What are we, this kind of thing. Is it a contradiction? How do you?
I always say two things can be true. People
yes.
should have joy and happiness and live your life and play hard, work hard. That's kind of the way I live. But you also, sort of like children are watching, people are watching everything that you do, everything that comes out of your mouth. And I think there has to be a congruence between what you say and what you do, how it's viewed and how it lands. And, we all have judgments and things that we think about other people's lives, which is why when you are at that level of leadership or activism, I think you should be mindful. I mean, unless you're, Oprah, who I don't put in the leadership category, right? She's an entertainer, right? So everything she does can be for commodification, for commercial use, right?
That's right.
So she can, film all of the things. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question, but here's what I'll do. Let's put that over here.
Yes.
Because, how does it free us? I don't know that it does.
I don't know that it does either.
But and it's like I was talking with Sam Reynolds, one of your
yes.
Colleagues. He said, we can get fixated on these spaces, right? You can draw a line on a piece of paper. He did this for me, and he said, "How do you make this line shorter?" And he said, "You're doing it. You make your line longer. As long as you focused on that short line of somebody else, instead of making sure your line is longer, you're going to be stuck being short or figuring out how to shorten somebody else's line. But it's not about somebody else. It's about you. It's about me. It's about what we are doing collectively and lengthening this line so that we won't have to start from scratch every generation." And that's, I think the frustration is where, you mentioned versus everybody got something to say, the latest one, the Locks versus Dipset and Jada Kiss, and there's a lot of commentary around it. And
which is great. I mean, hey.
And it's, we need those breaks, we need them. During quarantine, it was amazing. At the same time, there should be equal and opposite. And right now there isn't equal and opposite. And so, we just need the balance and make sure that, you have fun and that you're doing work. And from that particular image, most of the people, or at least half of the people I know for a fact, are rolling up their sleeves and getting busy. So I know
no question
you're done. So I'm never going to question that. But you raised the question about, our responsibility to the people who are watching. And
that's the question for me. Yeah, I don't question them. I don't question the work. It's the response. What is it? Yeah. Because I mean, it reinforces that too. That's what I'm working toward.
For the gram, yeah. No, listen.
For the gram and for I mean,
for material wealth. For, you when you talked about, and this actually was the impetus for me making sure. When you told me about, the end of Carter G. Woodson, or, how a lot of these people who put their entire lives into making sure we know stuff died pretty much penniless, had to scrape and put together nickels and coins from children. Yes. Things happen to me, and I watched this thing on CBS with Darren Walker and the Ford Foundation. And, I know Darren Walker, and I don't know if we should even bring this up, but I'm going to, the enormous amount of money that is being given. And we talked about this philanthropy, things that, that will build other people's empires, so to speak.
That's right.
I'm like, okay, we're gonna build this one brick at a time. I wish there were more people building things one brick at a time. And I said for us, and then we had
there will be. Now keep going, because I want to, while you're talking about this, go on.
I'll show you shorts. All right. For us, the goal is, to collect and bring in more people and support more people who are actually doing the work, because usually folk that are doing the work, they go silent. We don't see them on the gram. They're not the ones with the $1 million endorsements and checks and things and sponsorships and even foundation money coming in. They're the people that are grinding it out, nickel and diming it the way Carter G. Woodson did. And I don't want anyone who is a Carter G. Woodson in this generation to ever be financially insecure. You should have as much money and I look at the Hasidim, they make sure, I'm gonna say this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I sat on the radio with a Lubavitch rabbi for 4 years, and they fund their scholars. You scholar in the Jewish community doing that work, you can have 12, 15 children. They will make sure you're taken care of.
That's right.
Because that's important. I just need to say that.
No. Thank you. Because John Clark said that. He said, you take care of your scholars. I mean, George Jackson did that from prison. And while he is there, while they are there, while these, and by the way, one I didn't mention, I will mention, there's only one living former chair of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There were two until last summer, and then John Lewis made transition. The last living member of that group, Chuck McDew, Marion Barry, Kwame Ture, Storley Carmichael, John Lewis. The fifth used to be known as Hubert Rapp Brown. Now, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who is in federal prison for the crime of killing a sheriff deputy in Atlanta, where the witnesses have recanted. The case has fallen apart, but in the words of the damn police, when they arrested him and got him convicted, the prosecutor, we finally got him. In other words, this Black Liberation War, Black guerrilla family, y'all remember H. Rap Brown and I'm looking at his books right here. The one he wrote while in prison, The Rap is Live, Revolution by the Book, and the other one, Die, N-Word, Die, which is the one that he was writing around the same time Blood in My Eye and them came out. They don't give you any peace. Now, while all that's going on, since you mentioned the Ford Foundation, that's why they get up. This is Karen Ferguson's book, Top Down. The Ford Foundation, Black Power, and the Reinvention of Racial Liberalism. Because while this war is going on, this is when the Black Studies movement jumped up on these college campuses. Ford sunk millions into shaping the direction of Black Studies. In other words, they're not revolutionary. They're going to make sure you're not either. And so the point is, but they're going to turn it into, we should study this and we want to help society be better. Watch where people put their money. In fact, we talked about this before, and we have to talk about this again because last summer we talked about Dunbar High School and the importance of Dunbar. I'm reading a book now, which is a very austere, important reminder. This is Chantella Sherman's book, In Search of Purity, Popular Eugenics and Race Uplift Among New Negroes, 1915 and 1935. She got a whole chapter in here on Dunbar High School and Howard University and how some of the people involved in that Black group were eugenicists in terms of the idea, not just biological eugenics, skin color, proximity to whiteness, social eugenics too. We got to breed a better class of Black person. I want y'all to see that this is a question of class. It's a question of social class. Who is your family? Who are your connections? And that stuff is deep in the class tension. That's one reason Franklin Frazier is like, y'all ain't got no power. You're trying to create an imaginary world to operate in. And George Jackson is like, yeah, and while you doing that, they killing us and they will kill you too. Nobody is safe. Even Oprah, you're trying to shop for a new bag in France. They like, no, didn't this man tell you? But the whole point is that in that process, who's funding this eugenic stuff? Who's giving money to some Black faculty at HBCUs during this period? General Education Board, Julius Rosenwald, Rockefeller Foundation. In other words, put the money with the people that will engage in some form of analysis and critique, but who won't say this whole rotten system got to be. No, we got to grow the people who would, and then give them the awards, give them the fellowships. And is this a critique of those people? George Jackson would say, hell yes. I would stop short and say, no, not completely, because in order for people not to fall into that, you got to have a place for them to build, which is why this narrative thing is so important. You got to build a space where people can build. Now understand, as you do, it could be problematic, but the other thing we have now is it's not even like the 70s or 80s. The system is there, the system is global, but we're increasingly aware the system is global. So let me end with this because we have to keep fighting. One other thing is today, Saturday the 7th, tomorrow is actually the anniversary of something that's in Tennessee. Now, we talked about Juneteenth. I wonder how many people have heard of Emancipation Day on August the 8th. That's crazy. August the 8th, 1863, Andrew Johnson, that criminal, who was at the time the military governor of Tennessee, freed the Africans he had enslaved, including several of his quote unquote children. Right? One of the guys was Sam Johnson, a formerly enslaved African. Sam Johnson helped organize the first Emancipation Day in Tennessee. He was in Greenville, Tennessee, August the 8th, 1863. People say, well, why would they call it Emancipation Day? Because that's when they found out. Because let's just get this straight. People say Juneteenth is when the last, that was June 1863. I'm sorry, June 1865. Juneteenth is not the day, because guess what? He organizes it in 1871. Why? Because even though Johnson called himself freeing the enslaved Africans he had captive, remember, the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply in Tennessee, in Kentucky. And so you know what freed them legally? The 13th Amendment. That was December 1865. So people say, oh, Juneteenth was the last. If you was in Tennessee, as Abraham Lincoln said when he was running for re-election, he said, in this war, I want God on my side, but I must have Kentucky. Which means what? I'm not going to end slavery in a state I got to win. So Emancipation Day to this day in Western Kentucky, in Tennessee, parts of Tennessee, is still celebrated. And if y'all want to check it out on Emancipation Day, oh wait, is that Juneteenth? What is that, January 1st? No, add August the 8th to your list. And if you look at the Beck Center, James and Ethel Beck in Knoxville, that's a whole nother story about this black power couple back from the turn of the century, early 20th century. The Beck Center does big Juneteenth thing. They're still doing, a big Emancipation Day thing. And in fact, the governor of Tennessee in 2007 put together a bill recognizing Emancipation Day. And in 2020, while everybody was scared, the Tennessee legislature argued that Emancipation Day should be a state holiday. I'm not talking about Juneteenth. So that shows you George Jackson and the NCCA giving y'all them holidays because they trying to stay in power and they keep trying to distract you. We don't want no holidays. So Black August is not Black History Month. Black August is the day you say, now let's turn in. And so
read. You got a 900-page book.
I gotta go. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna save this one because I haven't been down there yet. But if you're in the DC area, you know, the museums open back up. People say, well, you need a ticket to get to the Museum of African American History. Yeah, but you can go online and get a ticket. It's not a problem. Same day, you can do that. But trust me, you don't want to start with the Museum of African American History. If you're talking about Black stuff, there are other museums in the Smithsonian, the Anacostia Museum across the East River, but the National Museum of African Art, I could finally get in there. I don't know when I'm gonna go. I got between now and next week, I'll come back with a report. There's a new exhibit that was delayed. It opened when they reopened a couple of weeks ago. And I've had the exhibition catalog for a year. Caravans of Gold, Fragments in Time, actually over a year. Art, Culture, and Exchange Across Medieval Sub-Saharan Africa. That's Mansa Musa, who gave away so much gold on his Hajj to Mecca that it depressed the value of gold in the world. That ain't the point. In this exhibition are pages from the writings of Ahmed Baba from the 15th century in Timbuktu and older copies of the Tariq al-Sudan and the Tariq al-Fatah, two of the oldest books that Black people wrote on the history of West Africa, dating back as far as the 13th century. So between now and next, I gotta go. I just wanna, y'all understand the importance of reading and writing. Ain't nobody teach Black people how to read and write. We taught the world. And 1619, what you about 1619 project? I'm talking about 1319. Can we at least go back 300 years? So Ghana, Mali, Songhai, when we come back next week, I'll have a report. But I can't wait to see those documents. So y'all.
Oh, we're live next week. So.
Oh, you know what? Oh, Professor Hunter, we got to figure that out. I mean, and you're a genius at this too. So going live, should we get people to ask questions?
Yeah, sure. At me on Twitter, and then I'll say you want to ask a question, and then I'll follow you, and then you DM, and then I'll send a link. Let's do two. Yeah. I mean, and if there's something between now and then that comes to your mind, our narrative people should have some kind of pride of place in this. I think you're right. We should give okay.
Yeah.
Let me get with your race.
I knew it was gonna click. Google, what'd you think?
All right. Yes. So if you're a narrative member, you're gonna get preference. So narrative members only will get to ask questions. I'll do that. I'll do it like that.
Yeah.
That's way smarter. Thank you.
No. We figuring it out. All right. So love you.
Love you too. See you next week, everybody. Hit the like button, subscribe, share.
Yeah. Happy Black August. Y'all go look it up.
Get ready to go read this Blood in My Eye.
Don't get mad. Hey, look.
I'm already mad. So this
text me. We should have a Blood in My Eye book club.
Okay, I'm down with it. Let me get into it. I appreciate it.
No, let's do it. You know what? See what you think. Hey, y'all in narrative. Ooh. Yes. Okay. Everybody pause. I'm telling all these people in my head to be quiet. Except George Jackson, who I don't want to piss off because the dragon has come and I don't want to.
I love it in your head.
Love you too.
All right. See you next week.